Get out your neighborhood bylaws. It's section 5.20. No signs shall be in the yards. If you don't take this Harris Biden shit down, I will sue you.
Homeowners Association could lead to foreclosure, and it centers around this old truck. The showdown is happening in Chesterfield.
They fined him $5,000. West 2's Dan Billow reports he was fined $100 a day because his trees were about 3 feet too short.
HOA threatening community members with fines and other penalties if residents post critical comments about the board on social media.
Did you fear losing your home over a payment you didn't owe?
Yes.
If you've been following along with my videos, and I've been talking about homeowners' rights and all the things that it takes in a real estate transaction to not just get through closing, but when you actually own the property, some of the things that can arise are pretty crazy.
What do you think you're doing?
I'm fishing.
There's no fishing here.
I don't see no sign.
This is a private pond. Do you live in this neighborhood?
And HOAs happen to have some wild authority, and in some states, like New Jersey, I believe it is, they can even front run your mortgage, like HOA liens. And you really need to know your rights in this whole adventure with HOA. So we're going to go through some of these horror stories, and I can't believe some of the stuff that they can enforce.
Can I help you? I want to talk to you. This is Elba. I want to show you something.
I'm sorry, I can't come to the door right now.
Get out your neighborhood bylaws. It's section 5.20. No signs shall be in the yards. If you don't take this Harris Biden shit down, I will sue you.
And let's talk about it, and let's see in the comment section if you've got any horror stories and kind of like how did you remedy it. Because knowing your rights and knowing your CCRs and knowing your bylaws and knowing how to fight back is really important. And I've talked about how to kind of fight back against these HOAs in some of my other videos. Go check those out. Not an attorney, I just happen to be a real estate agent that see this stuff all the time, been around the game a little bit, and maybe I can just kind of point you in the right direction. So let's get to some of these other horror stories.
I just think it's going to get all stolen, you know?
This sheet of paper is the cause for the concern. A list left earlier this week by Homeowners Association of Auburn Greens that mandates leaving garage doors up from 8 to 4 Monday through Friday.
I have nothing to hide. I understand somebody had people living in the garage. I don't. I am following the rules. All I'm asking is a reasonable way of going around this.
Hearing are the potential punishment for keeping the door down. But for some, paying the fine may be worth avoiding a burglary. All of the Homeowners Association for Auburn Greens wasn't returned, and the office was closed during the hours it had posted as opened.
In this situation, it is really wild that they can be so petty to take your safety and put it below what the HOA and its president and bylaws and all the people on the board want. I mean, the idea of like leaving your garage door open because they believe that somebody else in the community had somebody living in it, it's punishing the whole community for what one person did, and that doesn't seem right to me. And it's wild that the municipalities can allow them to kind of have this oversight and the powers to enforce that and then fine you if you don't do it. I mean, that's like leaving your front door open all day because they're afraid somebody's going to make a sandwich that they don't agree with. And I'll say go down the rabbit hole like I have on HOAs recently. It is pure chaos. Cars getting booted, you know, people getting, you know, kicked out of fishing ponds and all kinds of stuff for the wildest reasons. And just make sure that you know your rights, and this is why I'm making these videos, to try to educate and put some stuff out there because nobody else seems to be doing this stuff, and people need to know how wild this stuff is.
Jason is concerned.
I'm still worried a little. I'm still a little worried.
See, this is another thing you'll see. A lot of times phones, emails, opening hours, locations that they're supposed to be at, they're very hard to find. I've spent days, and I've talked about some other videos, I've spent days trying to track down who's the head of an HOA, where their CCRs are. A lot of times the property managers don't have the rules, you know, bylaws, CCRs. They can't give them to you. Nobody knows if it's been updated and who knows when. And I'll say this, a lot of the people on these HOAs, and HOAs have their time and place, don't get me wrong, but for a lot of situations, the people on the boards of the HOAs, they have no background in anything they're trying to do. They don't have a legal background. Most of them don't have an accounting background. They don't have any of the admin backgrounds to keep up with a lot of stuff, and some of them are way overworked. And I've often heard it said, well, if you don't want to get on board with it, well, you're part of the problem. Well, I don't agree with that, because a lot of people that live in these HOAs, they just want to be left alone. They want to pay their bills. They want to come home from work. They want to spend time with their family. They don't want to fight over sidewalks and trash cans and all these petty rules that happen in a lot of these HOAs. This is a prime example of you couldn't find who's actually in charge, but they just keep finding you and coming out with these crazy rules, and there's no way to fight it.
Homeowners Association could lead to foreclosure, and it centers around this old truck. The showdown is happening in Chesterfield.
When you looked at it, you didn't think, I want to paint this or change this?
Oh, no. I looked at it and thought it's beautiful the way it is. It reminds me of the truck that I grew up in with my dad.
Florida just enacted the homeowners bill of rights, and it kind of limited a lot of this stuff and said what they can and can't do, and we'll talk about some of the other stuff later.
It's not damage, it's just the way the finish has evolved over the years.
His homeowners association hates it, so much so they are suing Lipka. The bylaws state vehicles with moderately severe body damage can't be parked in the driveway, but Lipka says this isn't body damage.
It's the original Ford paint from 1965, and it's sought after now, classic car enthusiasts.
In the car world, it's known as a patina finish. But
see, I had a truck just like this growing up, and I loved my old truck. And did it have a couple scratches on it? Yeah, but in this situation, a lot of hot rodders, they will paint their car, flat gray or primer black, and the patina look is really in now. I mean, I've seen brand new cars with these type of patina looks on them. It's a thing. But beauty is oftentimes in the eye of the beholder, and in this portion, it's who has the power, and that's the HOA president. Like, I just don't understand, like, in a free country, you can have somebody like this limit just because they don't like the flower color you put in, and we'll get to that later in the video, that the guy that was fined about how tall his plants were. Like, as in not tall enough. Like, some of this stuff, it's like, who makes up these rules? It's like they have way too much time on their hand, and it goes beyond, like, just the common sense of keeping the neighborhood beautiful. It's more vindictive and more like, we just want to punish anybody that doesn't like what we have to say, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Nuremberg defense will not work. You are not just following orders. You are doing this willfully, maliciously, noxiously, purposefully, despite homeowner objection.
And what's wild about this is they can put a lien on your house, and in some instances foreclose on you. And if you don't have the ability to fight them, so they fight you with the HOA money from the other people in the community, and you have to fund your own legal defense. And just like the guy we'll see later that fought and won, you have to pay it, and if you don't pay it, they lien you. You have to pay it, then sue. And it's this long, drawn-out battle just for a petty thing that nobody wants to fight over. And you'll see like this in non-HOA communities where people will weaponize code enforcement against each other. They'll weaponize the sheriff's department against each other. They'll put in all these petty complaints with the sheriff's department or code enforcement or the health department, and then you're constantly fighting one battle. And I feel really bad for law enforcement and code enforcement, all of them that have to show up and deal with these type of people that just got nothing else better to do than spy on their neighbors. And it just like, it's very, it makes me kind of sad that so much time, energy, and money is wasted on some of these petty things. And here's a shot of this man just giving them what for, because neighbors will turn on each other just for like power and gossip and in drama. And I feel like we should really question who we give this authority to. And a lot of times in these situations, it's just whoever wants the job and has the time to do it. I want to say this too about HOAs. Not everybody wants to live in one. And when you have certain communities that have some very problemsome board members and they harass everywhere. Sometimes people will start moving out of the neighborhood. The price points of the properties can fall because sooner or later when one sells for less just to get out of the neighborhood, and the next one and the next one, and then houses sit in the neighborhood for longer, and then the community knows you don't want to live in that HOA, you don't want to live in that neighborhood. Pretty soon, the value of everybody's house starts to go down. And I don't know why they don't understand this, that if you're mean to people, they don't want to live there. And this is a situation you'll see with some. First question I get sometimes when I get somebody wanting to move is, does it have an HOA? Does it have an HOA? I don't want to live in an HOA because I don't want to have to deal with all these problems. I want to come home after work. I want to just mind my own business. And, that's just something to think about.
And they tried to steamroll over me, and it's just not going to happen.
The amount of money that you spend, I imagine, would far exceed any HOA dues that you would have had to pay all along, yes?
Way beyond it, but
I mean, like in the case of this man, like he wasn't even in the HOA. His property hadn't been within the curtilage of the HOA and wasn't even on the map, but he had been paying and realized that they had fraudulently represented that he was supposed to pay, and he decided not to, and they tried to take his property. And he said, you know what, I'm going to fight you, and I have the means to do it. And he did. I think I'm going to do a whole story on this guy. It's awesome. I love it when you stick it to the man. But I don't want to sound like I'm totally against all HOAs and people in it. I'm just saying that you got to question some of this stuff, that they have the ability to make you leave your garage door open all day, or they have the ability to, fine you for your countertops not being like the next door neighbors inside your house. And a lot of states are trying to fix this, and it's because of videos creating some awareness for this stuff that politicians are actually saying, you know what, you shouldn't be able to do that.
HOA threatening community members with fines and other penalties if residents post critical comments about the board on social media. It's ruffled feathers, to say the least.
A usual neighborhood page full of events, lost dogs, and safety updates. But when board elections kicked off last year, the debate over who should be seated got heated.
It was disagreements about how certain members of the board run the board, where they're spending our money, things of that nature.
Those disagreements played out in the comments of the page. Following elections, the board proposed a social media policy restricting opinions about the board on Facebook.
And this is another one, freedom of speech, the ability to redress either your government or, in this situation, this is pretty much a government that is able to make rules and regulations and fine people and take their property. And for you not to be able to organize and speak out against that, there's something wrong with that. And that's something that really kind of strikes really home with me as a veteran, as somebody that believes the First and the Second Amendment is so important. And for them to be able to fine you just because you spoke out against them, there's something really wrong with that.
Was vehemently opposed by the community and quickly tabled. Then this letter showed up at Nardesha's home.
They are threatening if I don't remove any content that frames certain members of the board in a negative light.
Threatening her with $250 daily fines, as well as taking away her access to community amenities. The letter was sent from a law firm paid for by HOA fees to at least 11 people.
And they are asking.
I'm a huge believer that, you do sign away your civil rights when you're signing into an HOA or.
And when these law firms send you these letters, they're billing either the HOA or you. They're going to bill the HOA and in quasi you're paying that through assessments or whatever and your dues, or they just send you the bill in the fine for response to you, which is wild.
They fined him $5,000. WESH 2's Dan Billow reports he was fined $100 a day because his trees were about 3 feet too short.
I love these trees.
Just over a year ago, Pat Fitzgerald planted 2 magnolias in front of his Merritt Island home, the same kind of trees that line much of the rest of the River Grove subdivision. His homeowners association fined him $100 a day until the total reached $5,000.
I have to take the 2 trees up in 20 days, and they won't fine me $5,000.
The problem is not the presence of the tree or even the type of tree. This tree, for example, is okay. The problem is the height. The other 2 are too small.
And like, this is another one, being fined for your trees being too short. Trees have to grow, and sometimes you can only buy them certain heights. And it takes a really long time for them to get there. And it's wild that like, okay, well these are 7.5 feet tall, and they only have them 6 feet or 3 feet at Lowe's or whatever. They're the same thing as the others. They're going to eventually grow to this, relatively the same height, and you're not going to be able to tell the difference. But I'm going to fine you for this. Isn't there bigger problems in the world or the neighborhood that you could be doing? I just wonder, how does the people in the HOA allow this type of stuff to go down? But I recently had a client that got fined for a tree that had been there for 30 years, and they didn't fine her for it until she went to sell the property on the estoppel letter. And I just don't understand this stuff. First world problems.
Respond to CNBC's repeated requests for comment. Jessica Navas and Matt Bazone, who are also homeowners in the subdivision, began investigating their HOA.
I started to have this feeling that there was something odd about the HOA during the pandemic.
They discovered a history of at least 25 foreclosures in the community over the past 15 years.
Just one house can have a record between 2 to 3 foreclosures within that time frame.
If Jessica hadn't just took the initiative to go to everyone in the community that she knew were homeowners, we never would have known any of this, because all we did was basically go to work, come home, raise our children, that's it. And we never knew that anybody else was going through this, because for the longest I felt like, is it just me? Mid-2015, they started garnishing my wages. The first time I learned of that was when I got my first paycheck that they garnished.
Have been fighting for more transparency about where their HOA fines are going.
We had 4 months of pulling teeth. We wanted a general ledger, but they gave us a balance sheet and a budget.
We contracted a forensic auditor, CPA. It is very concerning to see that the amount of income that they're receiving is coming from these particular aspects: fines, citations, collection, legal fees. And her recommendation was remove the board, freeze the account, get access into the bank account. The numbers don't align with each other.
In most people need to understand how much power a board of directors has. Governments are giving the power of the municipality to these.
That there was a balance that was attached to the home because it had been sitting in the community, and they were fining us for that balance and late fees and any other type of.
So this is a situation here where kind of like code enforcement, when you buy a property, you don't really know all the liens and levies on it. Well, I feel like on this one, you probably would have known it because the title company would have probably figured it out. And I don't know if this story is completely straight up. There's something going on with it, just from going through so many transactions myself. But I will say that the idea that they can put a lien on your property again and then they can garnish your wages, that's wild. Like, that's some heavy hands that they're able to inflict on people. And I just don't know if that type of authority should be in the hands of somebody that's not completely duly elected or like has some type of legal background. Like, this stuff. And if you had the power to sue them, like, you would find all this stuff out in discovery. They wouldn't be able to do a lot of stuff, but they know you can't do this.
From 2008 to 2014, we tried getting in contact with the HOA, and we never had a reply from them. And we just kept trying and no answer.
By August 2015, the HOA put a lien on the Inostroza's home.
See, these two have the idea. The idea is, if you started combing through all the documents, the bank accounts, all the bylaws, the CCRs, and you made them put forth their accounting, you would find in a lot of these places discrepancies, problems. And in the state of Florida, they said, hey, if you can't put forth these documents, it's coming on the books. If you can't put forth these documents in a relatively timely manner, and you can't prove the fine or why I'm being fined, like a lot of these things, then and it can be produced in like 2 weeks, then you'll have to wipe some of these fines. And it's probably different in every state and at every level, but I'm just saying, theoretically, if you could go through this process, you would find out that a lot of this stuff is is messed up. I mean, a lot of these HOAs are being audited now, and you're finding a lot of embezzlement. You're finding them spending money on the HOA's dime for a lot of personal stuff, and that's the way you fight them. You request documents, you come through, you find mistakes, and then when you find these things, you report them to law enforcement or the higher authority, or you turn around and you sue them. And you know, odds are there is an attorney that lives in your HOA. I'm just saying, and you probably would be happy to do some of this stuff. So get you an attorney. If you're hemmed up by this stuff, force the discovery and documentation, all these things that are going on, and stick it back to them, because I guarantee you, if all 200 people in your HOA requested documents, these people on the board's life would become a living hell. And another thing, you'd probably find out too that the people that are buying or getting on board with the foreclosure around behind the other side, you know, Tim Snuffy that happens to be on the board, his buddy bought the foreclosure, and if you looked at the LLC that bought it, you would wind up they're both on the LLC, and somebody's getting a kickback or whatever. Some states are making this stuff illegal, but I guarantee you a buddy, a cousin, whatever, benefited from some of these foreclosures, and you'd wind up sending some of them to prison if you actually track down the breadcrumbs. So that's really my thoughts on this. I've done 2 or 3 other videos, go watch those, on some of the stuff that's going on with HOAs. And be very careful who you give power to on these HOAs, because they have a lot of authority. They have the power to fine, they have the power to do a lot of things, enact rules and regulations. And a lot of times there's a lot of discrimination involved in this stuff. So I would definitely know your CCRs and your bylaws better than the people on the board. Know how to fight them, band together, request documents, and if it comes down to it, get an attorney and fight them. Because, you know, a lot of times, not an attorney, but when you win, you can countersue, and you usually are entitled to your legal fees, as in the case of this guy that actually fought and won. He's getting his legal fees right now. But I hope that you don't lay down and just take it, and if you have to, run for the board yourself. Stage a coup, you know? And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you happen to be buying or selling on the Gulf Coast real estate, my email is down below. Be happy to help you. If I can't, I will find somebody that will. I am not an attorney. I am just a dude on the internet trying to be entertaining. I sure hope that it helped. Comment down below with your horror story from the HOA, and I'll see you guys in the next video.